Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. In reality, it's not about thinking life will get so much better or so much easier when you fill in the blank. Let's work on creating a life you love now. So let's dive in and get started on redefining Supermom to be someone who is present, intentional, and content rather than perfect in our homes, in our lives, and in our own. Well, hey there. It is Jennifer Roskamp, and welcome back to the Intentional Mom podcast. Interestingly, I just noticed I sounded a little bit I'm totally aging myself here, but do you remember Fat Albert, the cartoon way back? I was a kid anyway. Hey, one of the guys used to say. So, what we're talking about today is goals. And I love taking kind of conventional wisdom and changing it up a little bit and kind of sharing a little bit about kind of the other side. I kind of like to play devil's advocate with things sometimes. And so that's a little bit of what you will hear today. So we're going to be talking about how to set goals you can actually keep. I've got a total of 5 steps for you, and we are going to run through this, and you are going to walk away inspired and ready to meet your goals, perhaps for the first time with a little bit of a new perspective. So, how to set goals you can actually keep. Let's dive in. Number 1, your goals need to be, this is not a new thing, by the way. We know that our goals need to be measurable and specific, but rather than defining your goal as a point on a graph, you need a bigger target. You need to give yourself the whole target to aim for rather than just a bullseye. So here's what I mean. Let's say that the old way of setting a goal, you would have said, let's say you have a weight loss goal. And so your old goal would have said, well, I would like to lose 30 pounds by October 1st. Let's just say it's June 1st, right? And you're saying, I want to lose 30 pounds by October 1st. That's a very bullseye goal. It is, you are going to hit that target or you are not. There is one point to hit, and that's it. And that's where goals can become really difficult. And so let's use my strategy instead. Let's contrast that with my strategy of creating this whole target. So let's say then that you would say, I would like to lose 25 to 35 pounds somewhere between, and have that done somewhere between September 20 and October 20. Well, now you can see how instead of a point, you've got a target. And the reason this becomes helpful is because as humans, we see things in black or white, or we see them as pass fail. And really, whether or not you recognize it, and I recognize it, as humans, we recognize that a bullseye is really hard to hit. And so by default, we can often feel defeated before we even start. So this is why it's pretty easy to have us only, give it our very best halfway effort to reach this goal, because inevitably we know we're probably not going to hit it anyway. And so we never really give it our all. We never really go for it because we know how nearly impossible it's going to be to hit the target, to hit that bullseye. So you need a target instead of a bullseye. So basically what you're creating is more like a spread, right? I want to lose between 25 and 35 pounds. I've got a spread there. And I want to do that. I want to have that done somewhere between September 20 and October 20. Now you can see how I've got a spread there. I've got a target. So yes, they can be measurable and they can be specific, but not just with a point on a graph, but with a whole target. So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is it starts off by having you recognize that if you're someone who says you struggle with goals, whatever you're doing isn't working, right? We need to start by recognizing that. You need to essentially call it for what it is, which is however you're setting goals, whatever it is you're doing with that, it isn't working. And so recognizing that is kind of part A. But then the strategy comes where with one of the best ways to offset this is to take what you're doing and do the opposite. So if you're not writing down your goals, mapping them out, do that. If you are writing them down, mapping them out, writing out all the steps, just really being thorough and detailed. If you are doing that and you're still not hitting your goals, then don't write them down. Yes, I just told you that for right now, someone who is a huge advocate of writing down goals, that would be me. I am telling you, if that's what you're doing and it's not working, then stop doing it. I love talking about this. This is one of those core principles where we want to do more of what is working and less of what is not. And so if it's not working, then stop doing it, right? At least for right now, your better answer might be to not write them down. In reality, you know what you need to do, and sometimes we just don't like being bossed around. Sometimes giving your proactive self permission to take a breather can allow your reactive self, and I'm going to be doing an episode on this, proactive self, reactive self. We're going to talk about these things, so look for that episode. Should be episode number 3. But proactive self, reactive self. So you need to give your proactive self permission to take a breather so that your reactive self, this is actually the unreliable one. We need to give the unreliable one the ability to step in and take over. And usually the reactive self brings a whole lot of pomp and circumstance to the game. They come with a whole lot of excitement. They are rip-raring, ready to go. Now, they don't have longevity on their side. Reactive self isn't thinking about the future. Reactive self is just thinking in the here and now. But sometimes when it comes to getting the job done, especially as it comes to your goals, you're better off to let your reactive self show up to get you started at least. Because again, they bring a whole lot of energy and excitement and a whole lot of punchiness to the game. So what you're doing is not working. So do the opposite. That's strategy number 2. Strategy number 3. Stop defining it, whatever your goal is, stop defining it beyond the just start part. The only thing when it comes to saying, how am I going to make this happen, right? We set a goal and we say, this is how I'm going to actually make it happen, right? That's always the follow-up question. Okay, if that's your goal, how are you going to make that happen? How's that going to play out? It's an important question to ask. But strategy number 3 says, don't think or plan or map out or create action steps beyond the just starting part. Oftentimes, the just starting hurdle is the hardest. And if you can just get that behind you, then you can start being more strategic. Then you can start thinking long-term and maybe the best approach. But in the beginning, just start and don't think beyond that. Just say, all I've got to do is start and then do that. So let me give you an example. So about 13 weeks ago, I have a Peloton. Let me just give you that information. And I've had it now for almost 4 years. And when I first got it, I used it rather frequently. It wasn't the only thing I did. I like running. I like getting outside. Well, okay, like running. I like the feeling I get when I'm done running. I am a runner who hates running. If you've never heard me talk about that before, I'm sure you will. But I used to be regularly using it when I first got it. And then I didn't. I stopped using it to the point where I let my subscription fall off and I didn't miss it. But it still was sitting in my basement, of course. And so 13 weeks ago, I decided, you know what? I need to start using the Peloton regularly. And the only what I thought about, what I knew, let me say this, what I knew in my mind was that I wanted to try to ride it 3 to 4 times a week. And I wanted to do some of the classes that really spoke to me. I'm really into HIIT classes, so I wanted to do a couple of those. I wanted to incorporate where they have rides combined with like arms. I wanted to combine some of the weightlifting with it. But I knew that was going to be a struggle for me because I was defining it too much. I knew that I needed to just give myself the freedom to just commit to getting on the bike. And I could the rules that I set up for myself were get on the bike. That was it. That was the only rule I had. I could get on the bike however often I wanted. I could ride it for however long I wanted. I could do whatever classes I wanted. I didn't even have to turn the Peloton on. If all I wanted to do was get on it and pedal, I was okay with that. And that's how I approached that goal. And so what I did was I allowed myself to just start. And that meant get on the bike. And as I started showing up and getting on the bike more and more and more, I actually didn't hate it. And I actually looked forward to getting on it the next time I was going to get on, whenever that might be. Now, since then, I got more regular with it, and I'm now on a 13-week streak. So I guess it was maybe about 14 weeks ago that I started with this whole thinking about it and how am I going to set this goal. But again, I knew from having tried to set goals with my Peloton before, I knew that when I put too many rules on myself, I knew I just didn't want to follow them. And so that's why I needed to give myself the just start goal, just get on it and ride. And I could figure the rest out later. And that's where it became a game changer. So I'm now on this 13-week streak, and that's more than I have ever had. That is a longer streak. I have shown up and ridden that bike at least once for 13 weeks, and that's a longer stretch than I have had since I have owned the bike, almost 4 years ago. And I know that it's because I started it off with that just start approach, and that was it. And I could figure the rest out later. So that was really putting the strategy of stop defining it between just start and figure the rest out later. That's a testament to how well that can work. Strategy number 4, remember that the goal should always be progress. Moving the needle forward more than anything else is what matters, because in reality, the fluidity of life, I call this the fluidity of life. If you think about it, life is fluid, right? Life is always changing. Plans are always changing. Time constraints are always changing. Variables, ingredients, demands, roles, responsibilities, no matter how well they are defined, they are always at least have the possibility of changing. And they often do. At least, coming up with some different iteration to some degree. And so progress always needs to be the goal. Because again, we have to have room for life to creep in and mess with our best intentions. So for instance, every month in my coaching community, it's called Accomplished Lifestyle. Every month we have a goal sharing call. And this is a time where we come together and we share what our progress was. We share what our month looked like, based on the goals that we had set for it, and then we set our goals for the next month. But what I prompt them to do before they even start thinking about how successful was I this month, the first question I ask them is, again, this comes before we even share or think about our wins or progress. One of the questions they also have to fill in first is, what unexpected things did I have to juggle this month? I want them to give credit where credit is due, which is to themselves. Because when we first did this goal sharing for the first several months, I kept seeing this pattern. And I kept seeing this pattern in the members as well as in myself when we sat to evaluate goals every month, which is we would end up saying something like, well, I couldn't make progress exactly as I had wanted to because I ended up sick for a week, or I got added work dumped on me at work, or my husband was traveling, so I was a single parent. These weren't excuses. These aren't excuses. They're variables that also had to be considered when evaluating and reflecting on the month as a whole. And so what we're looking for in our Accomplished Lifestyle community in terms of goals, and how I would suggest you look for them as well, is to see progress made, or an intentional choice to set perhaps one goal aside to focus on something else, to focus on one of your other goals, or to focus on something else that crept up. Sometimes that happens. That's, again, that whole fluidity of life. But keep in mind that yes, we have that target, but the overall arching goal, The gold star moment is when you see some sort of progress made. That's the gold star moment. It's not, did I hit the target? Yes, you'll hit the target more often than you would a bullseye. But what we want to see is that we're on the trajectory to reaching that goal every month. It's a much more realistic approach. And most of us live on planet Earth, which means we're going to have this fluidity of life that we have to pay attention to. We don't live in a bubble where we can just protect ourselves from all of those outside things. They happen, and they happen a lot. So the goal should always be progress. That's what you're shooting for. One last strategy I have is also one that we use in Accomplished Lifestyle when we set our goals. And that is that you need to focus on the feeling. Here's what I mean. When you look back at the end of the month or the end of the week or whenever you're going to be evaluating these goals, when you look back on it, how do you want to complete the sentence? You want to think about it. Excuse me. I am human. Here's the sentence you need to think about. I am someone who feels, you fill in the blank with a feeling, as a result of how I handled myself this month. How do you want to feel at the end of the month? And we typically hear words like accomplished. We hear words like successful, organized, calm. We also hear words like rested, clear, energized. So you fill in the blank of this sentence. When you get to the point where you are going to reflect and measure the goals that you're setting, how are you going to answer this question? I am someone who feels, you fill in the blank, as a result of how I handled myself this month. Because whether you realize it or not, as much as we're after the thing, as much as you're after accomplishing that goal and kind of having that as part of your life, let's go back to my weight loss example. As much as you are after that goal of that weight loss, what you're really after and what is at the heart of that is the feeling that comes as a result of that. So again, in my example of weight loss, it might be confidence. It's the confidence you're after. It's the not feeling like I have to hide behind everybody else. That's what you're after. It's that sense of accomplishment. It's that sense of pride. It's that sense of finding yourself again. It's always that feeling that you're after. And so when it comes to setting goals, thinking about what that end result is that you're really after and defining that first is going to be the biggest motivator. It's going to be more motivating than actually thinking about, yes, I want to lose this weight. That is there too, right? The number on the scale, the how your clothes fit, the whatever else it is that you're after. The biggest motivator you're going to find is the way you're going to feel when you are successful in that. And that is huge. So that's the last strategy I have for you. So these 5 strategies are going to greatly help you when it comes to setting goals that maybe are a totally different way of thinking about setting goals. These are strategies that are really going to help you, again, take into account the reality of life, take into account the fact that you're human, and that you are, the goal is just to be working on it. It's showing up and trying. So again, make sure that your goals are measurable and specific and all of that, but define the target, not a bullseye. Number 2, recognize that what you're doing isn't working and do something different. And often it's the opposite that's going to help you. Number 3, stop defining anything about completing that goal or working towards that goal beyond the just starting part. Number 4, keep in mind that the goal should always be progress made. And number 5, focus on the feeling you're actually after. The feeling, identify the feeling that you are going to have at the end of all of this, at the end of your measuring time. What is that feeling going to be when you have made that progress? Think about that right now. because that is the biggest motivator you will find when it comes to working on those goals. So until next time, happy goal setting.